I get the vibe that you're distant. There's something about you that's different. I see it in your eyes. Something isn't right. Tell me again what I'm missing. 'Cause you're fading out. We've been here before. Tell me again, just tell me again, and I'll make it right. Don't go through that door. Tell me again, just tell me again, and I'll make it right. It is a lie when you tell me that nothing is wrong, just leave it be. But I see it in your eyes. Something isn't right. Tell me again what I'm missing. 'Cause you're fading out. We've been here before. Tell me again, just tell me again, and I'll make it right. Don't go through that door. Tell me again, just tell me again, and I'll
Rodney, how are you this fine Tuesday afternoon at 1 o'clock?
I'm great, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I am, my head's spinning a little bit.
Yeah, you think a lot
There's
going
been a
on?
there's been a lot of stuff going on here the last few days, and so we're going to be counting on you to fill us in on what it all means and that kind of stuff. Hope that's all right. What'd you do? Do anything fun over the weekend?
I walked. I walked 36 holes watching my junior play golf this weekend. So nothing. Yeah, 45 and cloudy and windy. So
Right.
I remember I took a shower. I guess it was Sunday. And I was like, man, that may have been the first time I'd gotten warm after 2 days. So
Yeah. Well, for anybody that's checking in for the first time, and that's usually where we get our views is after the fact, and that's okay because it's Tuesday afternoon. Um, my name is Andy Elliott. I'm a realtor here in Williamson County. Rodney is a lender here in Williamson County. And all we're here to do is share information. And if you have questions that goes deeper than what we're talking about on our show, on our live stream, called Dollars and Cents, give us a call, shoot us a text. We're happy to answer your questions. It doesn't matter where you're from. If we've got something, if it's a general question, we can answer it. And if it's more locale specific, we'll guide you to somebody that can help you there. So don't worry about any of that. We just want to be here to help, and that's it. That's the bottom line. So all that information is in the description box, easy to find, and we'd love to hear from you. Really would. So that's good. And yeah, so I've got a fun thing coming up this weekend. I'm going to go to Fall Creek Falls and walk around for a little bit.
nice,
I'm
nice.
looking forward to getting away for a couple of days. And I understand that the for anybody that's local to this area, if you haven't been at the Fall Creek Falls, it's a really awesome place to go, and they've got a new lodge, and I'm going to try to make video of it, and put it on my YouTube channel to kind of showcase it a little bit, I guess. But if you come to visit, go to Fall Creek Falls, and if you live here, maybe kind of jump out of town and cool your head off for a couple of days. So anyway, just thought I'd throw that in as a local advertisement. No, I don't know what
Yeah.
that
Well, be
is.
careful. It's people slip out there climbing out there on those rocks all the time.
Yes, they do, and so I will. If I'm not here next week, Rodney's going to go it alone. I'll be down there with a busted something anyway.
Yeah.
So as we always start out the same way every week, Rodney keeps us in touch with what's going on in the crazy world of mortgage lending. Here we go with Rodney's rate. Oh, that's right. On that. Sorry about that.
Nice job there. I like that.
I hope the vomit wasn't too much, but
Oh man,
a
yeah,
lot of
that was
a lot of
good.
people are stressed out. Here we go.
All right, as you can see on the screen, let me move it around here. Right now, we're down 30 basis points. It's a modest take back from the last few days. Now, for me, the U.S. Treasury is bouncing back up basis points. That's over here. It's up to 3.62, which is still better than we've seen. I'll scroll down a little bit for you. You see what's happened Friday through today. We have seen a lot of gains back in the mortgage pricing, which has which of course I like to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we've seen a little bit of a get back there. Yesterday we had a phenomenal day, as you can see, and then today it's showing green there, but we are down 30 basis points on the day. So um, overall, though, if you look at that, this is to me, this was a sign from, with the bank, the Silicon Valley Bank, um, getting that news, and then getting news, in how the FDIC stepped in and kind of relaxed, calmed everybody down, and took care of the customers there. So I think
Right.
that's what you're seeing now. Now we're probably going to see, what the 20 something, I think it is, Andy, that Fed's already talking about raising the overall rates again another 0.5%. So I don't really want to see that, but what do you do?
Do you think it's going to be that the 50, or you think it's going to be the 25?
I think it's going to be the 50.
Mm-hmm.
That's just kind of, and the only reason I think that's because it's what I've heard a million times.
Right.
Just from kind of the stuff I listen to, and economic advisors and things like that. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Well, it's amazing. It was, I think that when all this was happening here this last few days, I thought it's no wonder that shows like ours, we're never going to run out of steam, because something's happening constantly, be it good, bad, or it's just different, And I mean, here we're trying to figure out rates and housing and all the rest of it. And all of a sudden, what I would consider to be sort of an unusual situation. I hope that's the case. I hope it's a one-off. But all of a sudden, in 48 hours, this bank goes, is it insolvent? Is that correct? I mean, did it actually go insolvent? I mean, in 48 hours, geez Louise, that's quite a change. I mean, that's big.
Well, it happened. It may have happened that fast, but they haven't. That bank hadn't had a chief risk officer for like 9 months, or from like April of last year. They haven't had a risk officer. That's one, and then two. There's a law that stated they didn't have to show their 15 billion negative on the balance sheet because of what they had invested in hadn't turned out. I mean, if they had invested in 30-year mortgage-backed securities, they don't have to report those losses because the 30 years is not up. So that prevented them from showing that they were actually a $3 billion loss on their balance sheet. And of course, Kramer was on his show selling it and telling them that it's got a lot of room upside and blah, blah, blah. But they didn't have to show that $15 million negative on there.
So that's going to be sort of a surprise. And they really did take care of a unique clientele, it sounds to me like. Is that right?
Yeah, the Silicon Valley was, I think what they said was the majority of their investors were like startups and things like that, startup capital, just people, that I don't know a lot about it, but yeah, it's not like the regular banking that I'm used to, community banking and that sort
right.
of thing.
So then the next thing that we've got to consider is, and I'm going to throw this up here. I know it sometimes doesn't work the way I want, but this is pretty good. Mortgage rates tumble in the wake of bank failures. So can you help us understand, what does that mean? I mean, and how does that connect Jerome Powell in this? Because the message that I'm getting is, and I was just listening to Fox Business a little bit, they're just the business channel. And they're saying that he's going to be more cautious about jacking rates because they're saying, they're suggesting that it was the rates was part of the problem with this bank going under. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think they were looking at kind of nationwide, I guess. is what I was kind of the way I took it is like when 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 the interest rates are higher,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that means that the banks when they have to give out money at a higher rate. So let's say if you go in there and you get somebody deposits, somebody goes in there and deposits $100,000, and say they got to keep X amount depending on size and all that. So they got to keep like 10%, and then
Mm-hmm.
they take that other 90% and they try to make more than what they're giving you on it, right? Like if they're giving you a 5% CD, now they've got to take that 90,000 and go try to make more than 5%.
Right.
So all that's to say, yeah, it's that bank was just so different than regular banks, but as as the as the interest margin gets shorter, like the banks are, it's putting too much pressure on the bank, right? And they're giving the customer 5%.
Right.
So, so it's that's all they're saying is it's shortened the margins within banks, which hurts their liquidity as well. So, I don't necessarily think that that's what, but when people make a run on banks, I mean, like I want my money out,
Yeah.
that would shut down your bank. I mean, that's what it is. It's because they don't have it, right? Because they only got 10%, right?
Right.
That other
Right.
money they've got to go out and invest and try to make back what they're what they're paying you on. So
And
that,
we've been preaching this. Preaching is too strong word, but we've been repeating this um, for weeks on end. Is that perception? It turns into reality. And real estate, if everybody's in a rush to get houses because they think that there's no inventory or not enough for them, so you start getting this pressed on the market, right? Prices start to go up. I mean, the attitude of the consumer and they're what they're calling the market, but it boils down to you and me, eyeballs and brains and feelings. If we start getting too worked up about it, that's where the run comes from. And I think that's what they're trying to. I think what they're working really hard to do is to keep people calm. And boy, I'm hearing an awful lot about the Fed's overstepping a little bit on how they're protecting some of those folks on that Silicon Valley Bank. If I was a customer, we wanted to hear what the Fed had to say, and not like too bad, so sad you got over 250, you lose. What, golly.
yeah, I
But
think they've already created something like within just a few days they created something to where the government says, and this is what saved them. The way I understood it was the government agreed to buy these let's say mortgage-backed securities at their, I guess, a lot higher value than they are valued today, or there was
right,
a reasonable value or whatever it was, but it's a lot higher than they are today. So that way, um, the government's kind of give them a semi bailout, so to speak, right?
right.
By buying these things that aren't worth is what they are today, and then keeping the customers good.
Yeah. Well, and they're just keeping nerves. I don't mean to be a broken record, but they're just trying to keep everybody's nerves in place, because
Right, they got to, or else the banking system would fail if everybody ran out and tried to pull their money out. I mean, it would be, yeah.
yeah, you don't want that stuff. And so that brings us to the next question. And like I was telling you, I'm leaning on you pretty heavy on these first two because this is way over my pay grade. The next thing I noticed was that Fannie Mae reportedly postpones a $500 million plus mortgage bond sale, and it apparently is in response. It looks to be on the response of the Silicon Valley Bank situation. Am I reading that wrong?
Yes, this was their first sale of the year, and it was like from the article there was 542 million, and basically the way I look at that, Andy, is that Fannie Mae's they're just letting the market settle, just getting past this Silicon Valley Bank thing, because it is when a FDIC bank crashes, it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're just saying, hey, I'm going to hold on to this for a minute and let the market ride, because I don't know how much they have total, but okay, let's see. I don't know if the thing said, okay, they got 2.95 trillion. Okay, they got 2.95 trillion in total unpaid. So that 500 million or 542 million is like going and getting their nails cut, right? I mean, it's, put it in perspective. So yeah, them just waiting, I didn't take it as a big deal because it's such a small portion, and it was only these were only originated like January, the first quarter of this year or two. So
and these are bonds that people buy that are packaged.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how that works? They're packaged mortgages, right?
Right.
That's
what they're going to go and sell them on the secondary market.
And that's where you guys have done so good this last 10 years at those packages are now solid versus the way it was back in the crash days.
Yes, that article even
touches on that.
Touches on that and says, that underwritten using rigorous credit standards. So yeah, they're
on top of it.
They are.
That's good to know. So the next thing I wanted to touch base with is, now we've said this a number of times, how the real estate is local. I mean, the Nashville market is different than the Detroit market, and it's different from San Jose and Boise, Idaho, and Portland, Maine, and Portland, Oregon, that kind of stuff. But there was an interesting thing about why are there no houses to buy in many of the metro areas. And what it was talking about mostly seems to be is the number of homes on the market has been falling since the rebound of the Great Recession, as investors snapped up homes and as more older Americans decided to age in place. The trick on that is, as people get older, they got options, and they can either empty nest it and downsize, or they can move off to maybe assisted living or something like that, but it frees up their property. But what's been happening here this last few years is that the older generation, baby boomers, I suppose, would probably be the case, they're aging in place. They got a house is probably mostly paid off, if not completely paid off, and they're paying their property taxes and walking a dog, and so that particular piece of property doesn't become available, and so it affects the inventory. And so it said some analysis predicted that inventory would start to climb as builders scrambled to finish more homes. But, and I'm familiar with these markets up here, in market where there's not a lot of new construction, including Hartford, Connecticut, Buffalo, New York, inventory is hovering near historic lows. And I mean, that's kind of in some places, there's just no places to buy. Or we were talking about that. They're on the market for 60, 90 days. The inventory isn't fresh anymore,
Yeah, I mean, it's you just outgrow the city. I mean, you think whether it's a small town, big town, or whatever, you just take the number of people that move in a city. These houses, you get so packed. I feel that way about Nashville, about new construction. It's like, where are they going to go now? It's like, how can you find a lot, in that, I know there are, but it's just difficult.
It is. And it said in December, Hartford had just 1.4 months of housing supply, which we know is nothing. I mean, that's like really next to nothing. And yet they're still not selling because rates are what they are and buyers just haven't gotten back in the market. And it said in decades past, and this was an interesting thing, and there's a punchline on this particular deal that I wanted to share with you. It said in February 29, by contrast, there was a 5.9 month supply. Well, in decades past, economists would say there's a balanced housing market, and this is the way realtors look at it. A balanced housing market is between 4 and 6 months supply. What that means is that there's no undue pressure to sell because there's too many buyers or whatever the case might be, and there's not undue pressure on prices going up because there's not enough inventory. That, it's balanced. What you're doing is buying and selling a house based on the merits and the comps, and that's what that is. Well, but now it's down to like a month and a half, and it's still just so slow that it's not working. It says one reason inventory is so low nationally is that many homeowners were able to lock in record low rates, and we've talked about that a number of times. But low inventory makes house hunting even more painful and emotionally charged than usual. I'm not laughing because it's funny. It's like I've seen that. I've seen that. There just aren't that many options. But here's a couple of interesting points, and then I'll get to the punchline. Most populated metro areas in the country with the lowest inventory: Rochester, New York, Buffalo, Allentown, Pennsylvania. All those have just 1.2 to 1.5 months of inventory, which is like nothing. I mean, that's nothing. And what it says here is places like Boston aren't usually in the same sentence with housing crunch. There's just not that many buyers. Northeast is popular, but it's expensive to live there. It's taxed pretty heavily. And it's also saying it's dense. There's not a lot of places to build. In Nashville, the solution is take one lot and split it into 4.
And then build up. Yeah.
And then build up, the tall skinnies, Apparently in Boston, they're not big on that. But but to point all this out, and it was just an article that interested me that there would be places that you can go where there's really no houses to buy. And there was talking about this one individual who's trying to buy a property. It's super short story. Winifred Jones has been going through the emotional roller coaster that's trying to buy a home for 6 years. Well, I've got a comment on that. If you're trying to find a house in 6 years, if she went back and looked some of the properties she was looking at 6 years ago, she's hurting.
Yeah.
Because she's paying $700,000 for what was $150 back 6 years ago, that kind of a thing. But if you're a buyer and you're going for long term, not finding what you're looking for, like 6 years or 3 years or even 1 year, here's the secret here's the secret sauce. What you want, what you're looking for, doesn't exist. So there you go.
Yeah.
You can needle point that if you want, but if you can't find what you're looking for, it's because it doesn't exist. So there we go.
Yes. And you're right. I mean, in 6 years, she's missed
Everything.
Yeah.
All
I
of
mean, yeah.
All of it. If I was their agent and if you had a portfolio of everything that she'd look at, I don't know that I would show it to her because that would just be hurtful, Remember this 2,000 square foot house that we could have got for, I don't know, 193 that's now 547.
Yeah.
How do you?
I just don't know. I don't know if I was a realtor, if I'd even want that out there. I'd work with somebody for 6 years. I don't want, if I was a buyer, I don't want anybody to know it took me 6 years to still not find nothing. And then if I was writing an article, I wouldn't write the article. Why do you write an article if somebody can't find something in 6 years?
But the punch,
Oh, yeah.
but but the punchline, the last line in the article says, and she's talking about looking for properties that are officially list their homes for sale. Until then, she says she has little optimism that she'll
Yeah.
find something. Well,
I,
go with that.
I've seen that. Yes. Yes.
Oh, I'm not laughing at you, Winifred. I'm just.
Yeah. And the other one saying
Is that-
there's not a lot. She may need to fire that agent as the first one. But they're probably after 6 years, Andy. Shoot, they're probably best friends. I mean, it's like living together. I don't know.
They gotten married, they were engaged now, and it's turned into something else. It's sort of a dating ritual, is what this is now.
Yeah, it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
That being said, let's talk about, and I know that there's a lot of people that have questions about this, especially those that aren't in the real estate business or the lending industry, and that is what are real estate comps and how to find them. And I'm going to tell you, you can see it when the questions arise from buyers. Like in particular, I do watch Reddit a lot. There's a real estate subreddit, it's called. And if you're not familiar with Reddit, it is just, they call it the newspaper of the internet or something like that. And it's really it's a cool place. It's pretty well moderated. They don't let a lot of nastiness go on. But people have learned to just ask questions that, what's the word I'm looking for? They're just honest questions,
Yeah.
And so you'll find a lot of people that will say, particularly on Reddit, they'll say, my home's been on the market 3 months and we haven't had any showings. And then they'll say something along the lines, well, I know I priced it right because of X, Y, and Z, but but what could the possible problem be? And not realizing they've indicated what the problem is already in the question.
Right.
And the price is wrong. So I thought, are you pretty good at doing comps, Rodney, or is that my thing?
I'm okay. I'm better than most, but I feel like my expertise may lie more into what Fannie looked at than what a real estate or a buyer looks at. If that makes
Right.
sense.
And I understand that they're also Fannie's going to eliminate title insurance. Did I read that? I did read that.
I have not read that.
Yeah, I might send you that link. Yeah, it was, but we're already so backlogged on this. I didn't want to add that too, but there's a lot of interesting things going on that, here's what I'm getting at. In my mind, real estate itself is really, as complicated as people can make it. It's really pretty simple. I think that it is. Now, getting financed, rates, and all the stuff that's going on in the banking world, that can make it really confusing. But if you've got a good lender, somebody that can back you up and tell you this is what to do, what not to do, and get you pre-qualified or, pre-approved for a loan. And you beat me up a little bit about that last week. Sorry about that. If they're pre-approved, you can write a contract. Stop bugging me about it. Got it. Okay. But that part makes it complicated. But if you get that squared away with your lender, then all of a sudden it's simple again. Now it's just a numbers thing. And so when you're buying a house, especially in this market, that allows buyers to negotiate. And that's what we're talking about. That's why this market is so different. I'm going to turn that down. This market is so different than it was a couple of years ago, because as a buyer, you had to press the issue with extra cash, covering the appraisal gap, not getting anything fixed. You'd have to hand over everything to the seller in order to even get in line to buy their house. That was what it was. Those days are gone now. And So now you can look into, you and whoever you're working with. Hopefully you've got somebody that actually understands comps and can do comps for you, so that when somebody has a house price that you like that appears to be overpriced based on comps, it may not change the seller's mind, but presenting them with the idea that they've overpriced their house based on comps will soften them, maybe not for you, but down the road. And that's because that's the way that works. When you go look at a house and you want to make an offer and it's lower than they want, providing feedback to the other agent so that they can give it to the seller, they're giving the seller the solution. They're telling the seller, hey, we've had, let's say that we list a property at, I'm going to make up a number, $600,000, just to make it real easy to, $600,000. And nobody comes, and it's in a neighborhood that sells $600,000 properties regularly. If nobody comes, what that means is either the marketing is terrible, and these days marketing has gotten pretty good. The pictures are almost always professional, especially now, because you have to sell real estate now instead of just sticking a sign in the yard. It's different. You have to make good pictures. And so it looks good on the marketing, but the price is too high. So nobody comes. When a seller asks what's the problem, the only solution is the price is too high. We've got to lower it. But this is what I want, but you're not going to get that. And extending a period of time isn't going to help, especially if prices aren't going up very fast, because they're not going up fast these days. I would say that they're slowing down more than anything. So far so good, Rodney. Have I bored you to death?
No, I'm right here with you.
Okay. So then once you lower the property, so the key is, the thing you can write down, if you list a property and nobody comes, it is way overpriced. What do I mean by way overpriced? It could be 5%, could be 10%. Some people are way off base, but it's just way overpriced. And so you have to start nudging that price down. What you have to be careful is, if you do it too slow, I've seen people that they've been on the market 60 days and they'll lower the price by $1,000. Well, that's not going to do anything. But the technique is $1,000 gets it reactivated into the MLS. And that's what they're trying to do, is trying to sell the same house for $1,000 less. Not going to happen. But if you're too slow on lowering the price, you're going to be what's called chasing the price to the bottom. So what you've got to do is lower it until you start getting activity. And once you do, then you know that you're close. So if you lower a price by $25,000 and people start showing up, well, you're pretty close to good. And sometimes you can ride that out and get an offer, but it'll almost never be what you're asking. So that's rule number 2. If you list a property and people come, but you get no offers, it's a little bit too high. And then the third step is, now what you want to do is you've got a range on what it should be. If you get that property priced where it should sell, which is going to be stressful for the seller because it's usually less than they want, and I get that. But once it drops to that point, you'll have multiple buyers, or the chances thereof. And Rodney, you've been telling us you've been experiencing that a lot recently, lots of multiple offers, right?
Yeah, it's just like, it's exactly what we're seeing in like some of the, more popular areas or busier areas, whatever. It's like, you've got a house that's priced right, that looks good. The inventory's at 1 point something months, but that's with a bunch of crappy properties or properties that's already hit the market that nobody wants, right? So,
Yep.
With something that people want, there's more than one buyer right now usually for it.
For properties that are move-in ready, cleaned up, ready to go, you're going to and if it's priced to sell, meaning it's priced properly, Terry DeSelms always taught this. Here was his rule. It was a 2-step rule. In order to sell a house fast for top dollar, all you have to do is it has to be in a little better condition for a slightly less price. Not a bunch, but just a little, you know? And then once 2 people get involved, all of a sudden they're not, and this is borne true for a decade and a half. Once they get into that auction mindset, it's less about buying the house. They just want to beat the other guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like eBay. You know, you can't lose nothing on those eBay accounts. You know,
But honey, it's too much. I'm going to beat that guy.
did you see those other people? Yeah.
I'm going to take it to him.
Hey, jumping back, what you was talking about, what kind of thing or opportunities somebody have? I guess it would a lot depend on the feedback. But if they had that $600,000 house, and other $600,000 houses are selling in that area or in that neighborhood,
Yeah.
would it be to me, my first kind of thinking was I was going towards it needed to be repaired or something. It needed to be in better shape, because if other houses are selling in there that's similar, right?
Yeah.
It could bring that money.
Absolutely. Let's take an example. I'll just pull a subdivision out of my hat and to give you an example. And it may have changed a little bit, but probably not. Like there's a couple that I'm thinking about, and one of them is Brent Haven, where I used to live, and the other one is Founders Point. They're both really nice places here in Williamson County. But what you've got in each circumstance is each of those has, I think Founders Point's probably a little bit newer, but they've got houses in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, and I don't know what they're selling for down there these days. I haven't looked recently. And certainly over at Brent Haven, it's probably over that. But those are the 70s, 80s, and the 90s and the 2000s, and plus newer. So what you're talking about, Rodney, is you've got a property that has the same square footage, same number of bathrooms, same number of bedrooms, and all the lots over in Brent Haven, for example, most of them are an acre or pretty close to it. That makes it's a great neighborhood. It's great. But you'll have several properties that come up for sale in Brent Haven, not these days, but when they do come up, you'll get some that have been updated to perfection. I mean, they're very, very, very nice. And then you've got other houses like places on Per Year or I mean, there's just a number of streets over there. Can't think of them all. That were built in the 80s and maybe updated in the 90s, and that's as far as they went. The size works, the bedrooms work. And for those, if you've ever been over there, they've got that flagstone foyer. That was the style, the Brentwood style was that flagstone foyer. But if you're not able to get that kind of money out of that house, or nobody's wanting to buy it, it's because they're looking at houses that maybe have built the same time, but updated, and they look nice, Wow, they look really nice. Because they've got some of over the years, I've sold a lot of places over there, and one of the things they would have was be like, pink bathrooms with that little tile, and that's yee. Some would say that needs to be updated. Now it's like retro.
Yeah.
Can you do that for me on purpose? But that's how that happens. So the simple way to do comps, and if you keep it simple, because where the questions come from, and I've seen this, I have a house I've priced at $550. Well, there's another one half a mile down the road. It's sold for $625. Well, there's your problem right there, Scooter. The deal is, at least for me, when you're dealing in neighborhoods like we have around here, is stick within the neighborhood. Some people, if there's no neighborhood to deal with, there's always different situations. You can move to a zip code, but even that's risky. If you go to a zip code, that's really risky. So you go to a zip code and you pull up all the properties that have sold within a month. Anything more than that, it's going to be, in my opinion, unrealistic. It's going to be unrealistic if it's more than a month. But you do that zip code, the neighborhood, you find out what the properties are sold for within a month and try to price it with that. And you have to do that with not only the size, but you have to do it in the condition. And has it been, condition, good roof, stuff like that. And has it been updated? If you'll do that, and if you're honest with it, we talked about this last week. There was an entitlement or endowment bias. If I built it, it's worth more to me because I felt every dollar. And it's the same thing if you own a house and you've overpriced it, evidenced by nobody coming to make offers. You're normal. It's
yes.
It takes somebody to talk you down to convince you, did me, that it's not worth as much as I want it to be. So that's how you do comps. Stay in the neighborhood, stick within the same type of house, same type of build if you can. If one's frame, the other one's frame, that's good. Brick and frame don't necessarily comp that well together, So that's how you do that. It's pretty straightforward. And then if you want to come at a seller who seems to be overpriced, just pull your comps and then have your agent, whoever it is you're working with, if they're not willing to listen to you, which they may not, like I said earlier, but at least help them understand that they're overpriced. And you may be able to come, if you don't offend them, if you're nice about it, say, that's okay, see you next time. You may be able to come back and get the house at a better price. Comps.
I agree. The only thing I'll add is Fannie Mae really values distance. Like if the house next door sold, that one's a comp.
Right.
It doesn't have to have the same amount of bathrooms. They're getting, they feel like they have enough data to adjust for that. But there's nothing better than proximity.
Correct.
For a value.
That is
a whole zip code. I mean, you can go from city to city in Nashville and in every zip code in America, and have huge swings. So yeah, I agree with your assessment there, Andy. If you're honest and you do the comps, but see, a lot of people just don't have access to that information. Like I don't even have access to all that information. If you don't have the NMLS system, you can't hardly get the house and then go through the photos to see if they're updated and things like that. So it's extremely hard. You really got to call in a professional to help you with this one.
Well, to have it make sense, so that you don't frustrate yourself to death that is correct. And we were talking about zip codes. It's almost impossible to use that. But sometimes as a realtor, as a professional, you're stuck with it because there is nothing else, if it's just sometimes, but that's because it's a balance between art and science, I think, because you kind of can't miss, I mean, you want to get in and price it right the first time so it sells as fast as possible. But if you've priced too high and it sits, well, what the upper level is.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's been answered, so, but there's a tricky thing, and this goes to the reason I wanted to bring Brenthaven into it. Now, what's going on over there is that because Brenthaven is one of the few areas that I know of, I think maybe Raintree would be another one, but Brenthaven East was really unique in that it had almost all 1 acre lots. And so when you drive through there, you can feel the elbow room, and it's really awesome. It's awesome. Yeah. And if you move back in Devons and all those kinds of places to the back, it's a little less. I think they've cut down on the lot size a little bit. Here's my point though. When you can get an acre of land in Brentwood, Tennessee, particularly in Brenthaven, which is Williamson County Schools and on and on and on, quality of life, all of it. Well, what people are doing now is they're knocking down the original house and putting in a house that may be the same square footage, but it's off the charts in terms of amenities. I mean, so now you can be driving down the road. This happened to me about a month ago, a street I know really well from living there. And there was this new place that just like, what is that? You know, and it was noticeable how you went 70s, 70s, 80s, 70s, 2020, you know,
Yeah.
bam. It was like, and it had fences, and I mean, geez Louise. So that wouldn't work as a comp.
New market out there now.
Ooh, man, you know, and so it changes. So have somebody help you with that. It's a really, the more I've gotten into doing comps over the years, it's just such a cool exercise. And like I said, in my opinion, if you handle it right, you really can't lose. If you overprice, what you're losing is time. And I'm not saying that's the way to do it. I've taught you the way to do it. Price it a little bit less than the guy next door, as long as it's the same quality, and you'll do fine. So anyway, so I was going to jump just to, maybe we could can we do one more, you think?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Okay. I'm just going to touch on this, the home buyers retreat. And it seems like we go through this every week. And the reason is because it's happening every week. That's why, you know, come on, pull up. There we go. The idea is that as these rates start bouncing around, and I'll bet, yes, you've got to have, what I'm thinking about is, and I've learned not to pull things up on the screen. So last Friday it was like 7.05, isn't that right?
The rate?
Yeah, 7.05 last
Like
Friday.
that, yeah.
And then Monday afternoon it was 6.57, right?
Yeah, it went, yes, it took.
And today, I haven't looked at it today, so I bet it's 6.7. I bet. I wonder. Let's look. I'm going to look. Bear with me. So this is real-time mortgage news daily. Here we go. And the rate says 6.75. Yes. All right. The point of that, the point of all of that is what they're talking about is home buyers again retreat to the sidelines as higher rates crimp affordability. How can you, as a buyer, this would be a great question for you, Rodney. Help me understand locking rates in.
Well, the first thing you do when you lock a rate in is you need a property.
Okay.
I mean, that's first things first. So you have to get a contract. So when you're out shopping, you know, it's like, you know, when we got people shopping right now, it's one of the most volatile markets we have ever seen. So
Right.
we just tell our customers, say, hey, you've got to call me as second you get this. And I'm going to tell you whether we're advising, you know, to float, lock, or whatever. And that only advice is good for a few hours, right? It's not like we're not saying float for a month or something. So that's just the process. Is, you know, we talk about it up front while they're shopping, like, hey, this is what rates are. This is what we're expecting. You know, this is what they are today. And as people go through it, we just update them. You know, okay, it's been 3 weeks or 2 weeks. Let's send them a new estimate. Let's let them know what they're looking at. It's gone down. It's gone up. It's gone down. It's gone up. And that's all it is. They talk about it's retreat. Heck, I didn't know they came out. I thought they retreated and stayed retreated from the first time they hit 7%. So, yeah, I mean, that's what we do to lock in a rate. And as soon as somebody gets a property to lock in on, we just advise them what the rates are that minute and give them the information, let them make a decision.
And so that really, I mean, this, not to lean into you. Well, I am leaning into it. That really speaks to having somebody, a lender, if you're getting ready to buy, to having somebody you can communicate with effectively and somebody that you trust. So, I mean, because it sounds to me like it's sort of I don't want to use the word battle. That's a bit too strong, but trying to go out and buy a house now, it's an active, you're actively trying to get a house. I mean, there's a lot going on, and you need to know from your lender is this a good day? That kind of a thing. Is that reasonable?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we're doing it every day. I mean, that's what our life is right now. It's and we yeah, that's what our life is. Just constantly updating estimates, constantly advising people about the rates, and just kind of where they're at. And then you always have most lenders have a float down option, so there's really not much downside in these days in locking in that rate because, like I've talked about it before, you're only in this 30-day window or 45-day window. Rates are going to be what they are during that 45
Yeah.
days. Like you
Yeah.
can't. It's hard to pick the exact day you lock in, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, so that's it. You just keep everybody informed, up to date, and get it locked in as quick as possible, as soon as or give them the option to.
Yeah. And it's what it reminds me of is that when you're doing that kind of a thing, you and your buyers have done the groundwork up front to figure out what type of loan they've got, what's going to serve them best in general, whether it's conforming, VA, FHA, that. You've gotten the broad strokes taken care of, and now you're just trying to finalize it, to put a fine point to it. Makes sense. Yeah.
That's it. You're just trying to once they get a property, you just lock in that date because the rate is tied to the day that you lock it and tied to the property.
It's amazing because that is a heck of a swing. I mean, that's a heck of a swing, and we've seen some swings. But anyway, so the last point that I wanted to make, and we actually kind of touched on some of this, but not to be repeating, but that's just the market. That's why this is always going to be fresh. Here this week we've got these banking, I don't want to call them issues, but question marks. They're issues, but question marks. We don't. You don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We're hoping it doesn't spread. Contagion is the word they use. I mean, that's a hell of a term. Contagion. Jeez. Enough of the contagions. I'm done with that. I've had no more. No. Anyway, so the last thought was there's some top economists, and what they're saying is, and they're backing us up what we said the last couple of weeks, is that during the court, and now I'm going to flag this. This is Nadia Evangelou, and she's an economist for the National Association of Realtors. I mention that because I've always tried to be really transparent. One time, months ago, we went through, I think, 27 different economists, and they were given their opinion on how the market's going to do. And the National Association of Realtors and folks like that with skin in the game typically are a little more positive. And I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent, but you can count on them to be a little more upbeat. Well, what she's saying in this particular case, and that I'm telling you that just to be, so nobody can control me on that. I'm trying to tell you up front, National Associations of Realtors is going to put a positive spin on this thing. But what they're talking about is that the market is going to be sliding along, in her words, the bottom of the market for the rest of 2023, and that they're going to start to increase, prices will increase coming into 2024, I think is well, I know that's what she said, that they're expecting a rebound. It says home prices will dip this year, which they have, and they are, but anticipates a rebound in 2024 with sales rising and limited supplies sparking pricing gains. And so what Rodney's been saying is accurate, that we were talking about dragging along the bottom, that if you're looking for a property, you can kind of not feel like you're in a terrible hurry. Don't let time be too much of a pressurizing factor. Do I have that right, do you think?
Yeah, I think, Yeah, I don't know. I think you need. I think if you're a first time home buyer, you need to get in the market as soon as you can get in the market.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Rates are what they are. We do think they're going to loosen up, but if Fed raises them again, I mean, if Fed raises everything again, I mean, honestly, we're hoping for an all out inflation and let mortgage and real estate pull us out of a problem that they're trying to create, I guess, but
right, right. Yeah. Well, and the only reason I mention that in that way is because I'm still and Philip's got a really good question. I would love to see you answer this. The reason I'm talking about time not necessarily being the worst situation is after the last couple of years, you could wait on a property a month and it would go up $10,000. I
right,
mean, those were absolutely wild times. And my head is, again, I have one of those hot market hangovers like everybody else,
Mhm.
pardon me, that I can't help but think, if you're trying to get your ducks in a row and it's a month later, you're going to be okay. It's not going to go up 10 or 20,000 or what, it's not going to go up those crazy numbers. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying waiting is the best. I'm
Right,
just saying it will kill you like we did a couple of years ago. That's
right. Yeah. And you have time to negotiate, and you have time to look at properties and all that stuff. I guess
yeah,
my point is that when you realize it's too late, it's going to be too late. Now, whether that's July or 2020 or March of 2024, I don't know. Right? None of us
right.
know. But I can tell you this: good houses are sold fast,
Yeah,
and with the demand and if the rates come back down, I think it's going to push first time home buyers back out of the market again. I hate to say it, but I mean,
say that
it's
again.
I just think when rates come back down
Right.
and it sparks the people with the 2 and 3 and 4% to finally move,
Yeah,
and people that's been wanting to move but didn't want to fight all these cash offers and all that stuff. They're going to sell one for one, move from their house into another house. I think those people right there are going to. I think the first time home buyers are going to get pushed out of the market due to everybody wanting. It's just going to be a supply and demand issue again.
right. All of a sudden, they're going to have to be battling, and what first time buyers usually don't have, not always the case, but they usually don't have a ton of extra resources to throw at a contract to get it done.
Yes, the flexibility to make it work right.
Right. Yeah. So that being said, let's look at this. Hey, oh, there it is. It's not coming up. Can you see? There we go. So back to the bank issues with the experience of 16 years ago and personal credit rates through the roof now. When will home lending start to contract?
Well, they've already contracted it with the 7% rate. Fed's done that, right? Fed's all along said that this is what they want to do. They want to get rates up and balance this thing out. So that's
Right.
what they've done. I mean, as far as contracting that, they are at the same time. The other part of the government is loosening up some restrictions, like their FHA MIP, like
Yeah.
the loan level of pricing adjustments we've talked about.
Yep.
So the government's not like one part of the government's loosening up, the other part's raising the rates to shut down lending, but the start to contract for the lending, I don't think is necessary. I think it's more market driven than banks driven.
Right.
Because the majority of the banks sell, right? This is they either sell the mortgage piece to make money right then, or they service it to play a longer game and to make money monthly. So I don't think the contracting of that um, it's never a kind of a commodity you want to contract, I guess.
Yeah.
Am I saying that correctly? Because you can always make money from it, either selling it or servicing it.
Yeah. And I think that your comment about we can't forget the elephant in the room is not Silicon Valley Bank. It's inflation that they're trying to control. I mean, that's not
Right.
even the elephant.
And the ability for Silicon Valley Bank to hide, since they were so heavy in, I think, mortgage-backed securities, that they were hiding $15 billion loss or deficit on their books, and when they was only showing a 13 or 12 billion dollar whatever assets or whatever it was still it was putting them negative, but when they could show their balance sheet, it was showing them making billions, So
Man, yeah. I guess the bottom line, when it comes to buying a house, it's a case-by-case basis. It's you and your lender. I mean, that's what it is. I mean,
yeah,
that's it.
Your lender, as long as they're not at Silicon Valley, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it starts. I mean, because we can do the numbers, but you have to get, with your Andy, and then let them show you what that buys, right? I mean, because that's what
Yeah, I mean that's what it is.
I start numbers. I'm like, that this is what it's going to cost you. This is what it's going to, give them options like that. But yeah,
right. And I think that I don't want anybody who watches this to think that I'm promoting the idea of being too focused on the moment to buy a house. I'm not. If the time is right in general, get your house. If it's a house you want to live in and it's time and you've got the finances and the numbers work for you, get your house. Don't try to beat the deal because the rates are going to go down 20 basis points in a day or two. I mean, that's just sometimes I can get caught up in it.
Go up too. That's the thing about it. Is I had people at 3% wait until they got to 2.5 or whatever, and I'm like, or it's like good luck. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like
I do, yeah.
You're always wanting lower, but if you're moving and you can afford it, you just need
Do
to.
it.
For me, it's just a long-term investment. You look down the road in 10 years. What's it? Where are you going to be in 10 years?
I guess the bottom line here, what you're saying is stake a claim, get in the game. That's all it is.
That's it.
That's it. All right. Rodney, I am ready to wrap this up, buddy. That was really good stuff. Thank you for everything today. I've raked you over the coals.
Man, enjoy it, man, as always.
I know I can say coals. See you around next week. Bye,
All right,
everybody. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
See you.